Good evening. This is Robert Sungenis coming to you once again on the Robert Sungenis live program. This time for Tuesday, March 30th, 2021. As you know, this program is set aside for you to ask your questions, give your comments on any topic whatsoever. And I, as my role as host of this program, will endeavor to answer your questions to the best of my ability using our Catholic faith, our scripture, our tradition, our fathers, our medievals, our popes, our councils, our theologians, doctors, saints, catechisms, encyclopedias, and just about anything I can find to answer your question to make you walk away satisfied. We come to you on Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 8 p.m. to 9:30 p.m., and sometimes we go over, as we did last week, twice in a row. We went past 10:30, I think it was, answering questions, all kinds of questions. And I love to answer your questions, and I love that you come on board and ask them and want to know about your Catholic faith so that you can live a holier life, closer to the Lord, bound for heaven, and we're all going to kiss this earth goodbye someday. Thanks be to God. As you know, we also cover various topics at the beginning of the program. Now, I suspended that last week to concentrate on questions, but we're going to go back to our topic issues. And tonight we're going to cover a, I don't know, maybe not so spiritual topic called mask or no mask. Mask or no mask. That's a very hot topic today, of course. And tomorrow, let me see, what are we going to do? We are going to cover the blowback from the CDF statement that does not recognize homosexual civil unions. Yeah, there's been some blowback. So we're going to cover that blowback, and we expected as much, but I'll get into that tomorrow. Also, I want to do a little advertising here on the website you see in the, should be your lower left-hand corner, maybe your lower right, robertsungenis.org. We have all kinds of goodies there for you, books and DVDs and CDs and papers and debates and all kinds of things that relate to the Catholic faith that will help you along in your march of faith in this world. I've been doing this now for, let me see, 28 years. 28 years. And I've seen some good times and bad times and everything in between, but we're still here preaching the gospel. And I will be here as long as the Lord gives me a breath to breathe. And what else? Well, at that, we have a new book on Fatima that you might be interested in, titled Fatima, Fulfilled but Still Foreboding. And I have a new take on Fatima that I think most people that I have given it to of a scholarly level have said, yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head. And this is an answer many people have been waiting for. So consider that, and one of the gentlemen was a staunch believer that Fatima has yet to be fulfilled, and he was looking forward to the future. And now that he's read the book, he has changed his mind completely. So I just heard from him this week, and I may put his blurb in the book. As a matter of fact, I asked his permission for that. So we have that, and for all you geocentric people out there, we have a conference coming up in October. That would be October 1st and 2nd. I believe that's a Friday and a Saturday. In Castle Rock, Colorado. I've never been to Castle Rock. I have been to Colorado, in and out, but it'll be a nice time of the year. just with a little nip of fall in the air. And the limit is now at 100 people, and that's because of COVID restrictions. Now, whether they will be lifted, if they are lifted, we might be able to take as many as 250 from what I hear. So we're going to be putting up some advertisements regarding that, who to contact in case you want to go. $50 would be your going in price. And now we were going to have myself and Dr. Bennett, the co-author of my Galileo Was Wrong series. He can't make it because of health problems, so I'm going to be handling it all myself. So you get to look at me and listen to me for 2 solid days. And I'll bring books and all kinds of things you may want to purchase, and we'll have a great time. I can guarantee you that. Anyway, so just wanted to advertise that. Nothing else on the schedule of pressing issues, but we'll get you more information on that conference coming up. All right, so let's get to our topic tonight: mask or no mask. Now, the reason I'm covering this is because somebody sent me a video on YouTube where our good friend Taylor Marshall was interviewing a woman who had an altercation at a Catholic church with the priest of the church, who called the cops on her. And it was about whether to wear a mask or not. Now, I saw the whole video, and what a traumatic experience for her, her husband, her 1-year-old child that was there, and for anybody else in the church. But I understand that not too many people turned around. They were sitting in the back, this couple with their 1-year-old, and not too many people turned around to see what was happening. And I don't know whether that's a disinterest or they're just frightened of the police or whatever. But the police finally came, took the woman outside with her husband, and a lot of this was on video because apparently either the husband or the wife had a video either on the lapel or somewhere, and it was a narrow view, but you could still hear everything that was going on, and you could see a lot of what was going on, but you couldn't see all of it. At any rate, that makes for good video, makes for good viewing, it makes for a good program, and I can see why Dr. Marshall put it on his program, because you can't argue with video. It's right there in front of you. So everybody has a pretty good idea of what happened. Now, he and the woman he interviewed, who was the victim of this thing, had an interpretation of this whole incident. And one side of me said, yeah, I can see, I can see why they felt that way and why they reacted the way they did. And, I could sympathize with them. Another side of me said, there's something wrong here. And I felt compelled, I felt so strongly about the other side of this issue that I felt compelled that, well, you know what, we ought to have a program about this ourselves. And let's look at both sides of the story. Now, I'm not going to be the judge. I'm just going to tell you what I observed and how I feel this fits into the overall situation. Because, look, we're all affected by this. We've all been mandated to wear masks to a certain degree, and you can't go anywhere now without either somebody, pointing the finger at you because you're not wearing a mask or not wearing it properly. And then you have a whole other group of people that say this is all ridiculous, and what are we wasting our time for? Is this is all about control? This is all about some section of society trying to get the upper hand on us and all that stuff. So I've never seen a major incident take hold of a society so firmly and divide it right down the middle with such opposing views that we have the society at total odds with itself. And we are all victims of it. So we've all felt it. It's not just some intellectual thing. We've all felt it. If you're a human being, you can't avoid it. So, and this is not only in this country, it's all over the world. So, and you get both views all over the world. So for the Christian, for the Catholic Christian, what should be his overall stance on this? Now, I'm going to give my opinion. And as you know, when you turn on this program, you get my opinion. Okay. I may be right, wrong, indifferent. But you're just going to get my opinion. So that's the way we run things here. I'm a nobody, absolute nobody. I just have enough information from the studies that I have done over the last 40 years plus to be able to give perhaps a little wisdom on issues of this nature. And as you know, I have done that for many, many years. So I'm not going to shy away from anything like this, although, my view may step on some toes. Hey, it's not the first time my view of something has stepped on somebody's toes. But look, we're here for the truth. We're here to live as best a Christian life as we can. So, let's look at both sides of the story. Then you can make your own decision. Okay, isn't that fair? All right, so, we have the one side that you're probably very aware of. As a matter of fact, somebody sent me a video just before I started this program. I didn't have time to go see it, but it was all about the side that says this is all bunk, nothing to worry about, blah, blah, blah. And so that's where we'll start tonight, because I feel from my conversations with a lot of Catholics, whether they're liberal, conservative, traditional, whatever they are, they seem to be on this one side. The more liberal people, I think, however, are on the other side. The more liberal they are in whatever, whether it's politics or religion, the more they're on the side that, wow, this is a really serious thing. We need to combat it very seriously, and blah, 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 blah. So, but the other side, the more conservative side, is not blown away by all this. And, you've heard the comments. This is just for worldwide control of people. So we had a COVID virus, but it's not as serious as everybody was thought to think, or was made to think. After all, we have a 99% survival rate for people that are at least under 65. For those that are over 65, well, they've got some problems to begin with, like, heart problems, kidney disease, diabetes, you name it. So something like COVID is just going to knock them over the edge, and the possibility of them dying is going to be a lot greater. And so they take it in stride. It's not like this thing is going to devastate the world with those kind of statistics. And of course, we've heard stories about the Great Reset, okay, where the powers that be want to reset the world, remold the world into a one world government, and have the elite control everybody and government playing a secondary or ancillary role to the elite that are in charge. As if this hasn't happened already, okay? So I have a little problem with that whole reset thing. I mean, they may come out more when they have an opportunity that's afforded them by the COVID virus to go advertise what their intentions are. But hey, this has been happening for quite a long time. The elite rule the world, and the government officials, as they come in and out, are basically ancillary leaders who look like they're doing the will of the people, but are being told what the policy should be and blah, blah, blah. And a lot of times the elites fight the elites. And that's good because it's just like nations fighting nations. The balance of power between the nations is what keeps peace in the world. If we haven't figured that out yet, you're way behind. Okay. And it's the same with the elites. There's a lot of elites out there, but there just doesn't happen to be one group that are the elite. So the elites fight each other, and they have different ideas of how to control the world. And so that keeps things peaceful for us because they're always fighting one another. So there hasn't come forth one group, one leader yet to control everybody. Now that will come in the future. And that man is called the Antichrist. And it's no figment of your imagination. This is real as real can be. That before Jesus returns, there will be one elite person who will control everything. Okay. Up until then, all the elites are going to be fighting one another. And, but they do have some common interests. You know, most of them are Malthusian. What is a Malthusian? A Malthusian is someone who believes that world population is too large, and they're going to do everything in their power to minimize it. And if it happens to be that they have to, you know, move people out of the way by allowing diseases to run rampant, they will do so because they believe it's for the betterment of mankind. Because if we have too many people, then nobody's really going to benefit, and we'll use up all the Earth's resources and pollute the Earth at the same time, and everybody will die. So that's their philosophy. You know, a lot of them call the people of the world useless eaters. Useless eaters. Yeah, I guess if you go to the back roads in India or Africa, and you see people living in the streets and with barely huts, maybe with 3 sides, and could probably blow down with the first wind, and you see them walking around very skinny, and you look at them and you say, what use are they to humankind? That would be the first thing that comes to their mind. Because they just lay around all day and do nothing. They produce nothing, but they're always eating the food, and they're asking for more food from the countries that are allowed to give it to them, and so on and so on. But they never get better. They're always the same. They always are in the same rut for some reason. So they call them useless eaters. Instead of going down there and teaching them, helping them in more ways than just throwing money at them or throwing food at them. They're human beings too, and they can learn and they can get themselves out of the problems that they're in, but that never happens. Okay, never happens. At any rate, they think we have too many people in the world, and so they're going to exploit any kind of tragedy that comes upon the human race, and they're going to try to use it to their advantage. Okay, and since they have the money, they're able to protect themselves to a high degree from these tragedies that will happen, and the rest of the world, of course, will suffer. So that is kind of the mentality that they have, and it's never going to go away. Things like the COVID virus bring it out so that we can actually see what the agenda is, because they think that, wow, here's the opportunity. Let's jump on this and scare the people, keep them frightened. We'll just exacerbate the problem as if it's the world's going to end if we don't, put these measures in force, blah, 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 blah. And that's how they scare people. And at least a third of the human race is going to listen to them and follow in lockstep. That's a given. It's the other 2/3 they're worried about. And so the task for them is to keep convincing the other 2/3 that they're on the right track and we better follow them. And, it may turn out where they put chips in us or won't let us fly because we don't have a COVID vaccine certificate, or we can't enter here or there, So they may do that, okay? And they may not, because they may find out that people react against this. And, because if it was so easy, they would have done it by now. But it's not easy for them. It's not easy controlling 8 billion people in the world. Okay. You have to have a major catastrophe in order to get people scared enough or they'll follow you in lockstep. It just hasn't happened yet. And COVID seems to be decreasing in its severity. And so they think they're losing their control. I mean, just watch Fauci, Dr. Fauci, against Paul Rand. I think that's his name, the senator. Is it Rand? Anyway, and wow, what an interesting little battle that is between a defender of the rights of the people against Dr. Fauci, who seems to be controlled by the upper echelon of the world and basically is told to keep pushing the button to the floor or gas pedal to the floor. Now they're talking about, strains of the COVID that could come out and we're not prepared for it and all this kind of stuff. Okay, so keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, watch them, but just relax. Really, it hasn't gotten bad. Okay. Yes, there are people dying, and look, there's people that die every day. Okay. Death is a part of life. There are over 250,000 people in the world who die every day. 250,000. Okay. Now, fortunately, we have more births every day than we have deaths. So our population is not dwindling. All right. But death is a part of us and we accept it. And there have been far worse viruses that have hit mankind, at least as we've been keeping track of it for the last couple of centuries, that have devastated the population. And that's just with the viruses that come along. The other things, of course, heart disease and cancer, which kill over 80%, at least in the United States. They're 80% of the deaths that occur. And they're easy to fix. Well, at least heart disease is easy to fix if people would stop eating so much and get in better health. That's an easier one. Of course, cancer, that's a problem nobody's been able to fix. But even then, if you watch your lifestyle and you stay away from inorganic materials that can be harmful to you and smoking and all that kind of stuff, you can put a dent into the cancer rate as well. Okay. Of course, there's always a percentage of the population that have diseases we can't do anything about. And my father was a doctor, and we used to talk about his business because I was going to be a doctor like him. The only problem is I couldn't stand the sight of blood. So, at any rate, when I was talking to him, I remember him saying that 80% of the people that come into his office, he can cure with aspirin and a good talk and send them home, because most of it's mental. Now, that's after like 30 years of medical practice. He says the other 20%, they do have something wrong with them. And it's up to me to diagnose it, either to give them some therapy, drugs, whatever, or recommend that they go see someone else who's an expert in the field. But I have to separate out the 20% that really have something wrong with them from the 80% that really don't have anything wrong with them. They just think they do. And if we can be that crass about it. So I don't want to get off on a tangent here, but there's a lot of things that cause death. But the COVID thing is something new, something that hit very fast and very widely across the world. And that's the scary part. We know the rate of heart disease, we know the rate of cancer, you could set your clock by them. We know them so well because they've been around so long. Kidney disease, diabetes, whatever it is, we know the incidence of it, and we know how many people will get it, and it just basically never changes. But something like COVID, where it comes out like a cannon and spreads across the world so rapidly, that's pretty scary. Okay. And I think even those on the side of the fence where they know that people are exploiting this know that, wow, yeah, we can't just dismiss it as if it doesn't exist. And since, we do see the graveyards being dug for those people that have died from it, and that's what, upwards of 250,000 or more, and not decreasing in the same rapid rate that it came here. Okay, it's slowly but surely. So it's not something you want to fool around with. In the one side of your head, you've got to be aware that, yeah, there is a deadly disease out there. The other side, of course, is saying, yeah, let me see how they're going to exploit this to try to control us. And we see both. We see both happening. Okay. And that's what makes it difficult to diagnose and to try to do the right thing. Okay. So now let me go on the other side of this issue. So Mr. Marshall or Dr. Marshall put this video up and had a conversation about it with his guest. And, I don't even remember her name. So I'm not going to give her name, and I'm going to keep it that way to give her some privacy at least. But I was watching the video, and although I know all that I just told you about how they can exploit this, here's the situation as I saw it. The woman was told by the priest, or it may have been a bishop, I'm not sure, was told by the priest when she came up for communion, I believe, if I remember the video correctly, that either she wears a mask or he is going to have her arrested for trespassing, and we'll call the police. Okay. Now, I don't know if that happened when she was going up for communion or not. My impression is that she was told before communion that she was to wear a mask. Now, I don't know about the husband. He's right alongside of her, but I don't know what was told to him. I'm sure the same thing was told. But so the woman was told to wear the mask, and then she came up to communion without the mask. And I guess she was given communion, and then she walked back, and as she is in her pew praying, either at the same time communion was being distributed to other people, or if it was after communion, I don't know, but the police showed up right alongside her pew and interrupted her in her prayer and told her that the rector of the church said that she was trespassing and that he did not want her in the church and that she was to go outside the church and not come back in. So the woman starts arguing with the police and says, this is because the police said something to the effect of, this is a business and we're here to protect the business. So the conversation went off on a tangent of whether the church was a business or a church. Now, of course, we all know it's a church, okay? But in the sense of business, what the policeman meant, as far as I can understand, was that this is an institution that is on a city block. And if that institution has problems of a moral variety or of a, whatever, something that's going to cause the business or the institution not to be able to function as normally, then the owner of the business can call the police and ask them to, relieve the situation by taking the perpetrator out of the institution and let things go on normally. Okay. So I don't know why they went into this whole conversation about business versus church. Okay. On another level, of course, yes, it's a church. It's a little different than, Macy's or, whatever. But so basically what I saw was the woman had made a decision that she wasn't going to obey what the priest told her to do. And that was evident by the fact that she went up to receive communion without the mask and then proceeded back to her pew, started praying without the mask. At one point, she gave the excuse that her 1-year-old that she was holding would pull the mask down if the woman was putting it up to cover her face. But to me, that was lame, because if that was the only problem, then she should have stuck with that story. But it went larger than that. It became a philosophical battle. First, we had this discussion between whether this was a church or a business, which was totally irrelevant. Then second, we had, I was just praying in my pew and the police came up and disturbed me and told me to get out of my pew and that I was trespassing. And so she's complaining about the treatment from the police, but her original complaint was, I can't put the mask on because my 1-year-old keeps taking it off. Well, here's what you do. Give the 1-year-old to your husband, or perhaps you have a car seat you can put them in, or go outside the mask if you have to, okay? But you were told, the woman was told by the priest, in this institution, whatever you want to call it, we have a rule. That rule is you wear a mask, okay? I do the same thing at my church. I think wearing a mask is not going to do anything, and I have scientific reasons for that. But I'm not going to go up to my priest who insists that we wear masks and say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to wear a mask, and I dare you to do anything about it. Okay? No, I'm not going to do that. The priest is in control of that church. I don't own that church. He, as a representative of the Vatican, owns that church. He runs it and he decides what's good and what's not good for that church. Okay? Now, he may have reservations about it like I do, but this is what the bishop mandated and he's going to follow it. Else he's going to be reprimanded by the bishop. Okay? So I follow along. It's no harm. No foul, no harm. I wear the mask. The whole church is wearing the mask. And I get to worship God undisturbed, without any kind of thought about whether we're doing the right thing or not, and just worship God for an hour and a half or so. And we all leave. We take off our masks when we leave the church, go home, do our things, and Nobody has a second thought about it. Okay. So, from my point of view, this woman decided she wasn't going to do that. And I think she has a slight duplicity in her reasoning because, as I said, first of all, it was, I can't do it because my baby keeps pulling it down. Well, come on, there's some way you can manage to keep it on and keep the baby at arm's length so he can't pull it down. Okay, maybe you can turn him around so he has to face that way and he can't, he's not facing you and therefore he can't pull down the mass. That's a simple solution. Yeah, I know it's going to be hard. It's not going to be easy. What 1-year-old is easy? Okay. But the point is, she could have done something to obey what the priest said, whether she liked it or not, just to keep peace. This is his church. This is what he demanded, and he wants everybody to do it. And if you don't, well, he takes that as defiance against not only him, but the church itself, because I'm sure the bishop is behind it. And even if the bishop wasn't, even if the bishop said, well, you can or you can't, whatever you want to choose, well, that priest chose for this parish that they're going to wear masks. If you don't like that, then go to another parish. Okay? It's as simple as that. So now here's the other thing that I noticed. Not only was she bucking the priest and making decisions for herself, she was also bucking her husband. Okay, because when the police came over, you could hear on the video the husband saying to the wife, sweetheart, let's just, I don't know exactly what words he said, but let's just go outside. Let's, not get into a controversy about this. Let's just leave and we'll go someplace else. Okay. That was the husband's decision. And the wife basically said no. She was going to stick it out and she was going to argue with the police and hold her right not to wear a mask. Okay. So, wow. When I saw that, I just said, no, there's something wrong here. Okay. Now, maybe in principle, we can all agree with her. Yeah. The priest is making a big deal about this. Everybody's making a big deal about this. Yeah, we all see that. Okay. But look, you're not in authority. Okay. There are certain times when you can decide for your family, you're not going to wear a mask. Typically when you're at home. Okay. Or in your car or wherever you go. Okay. But you're in a church that is run by an authorized leader, the priest, who makes rules for the church. Okay. You must submit yourself to that priest as long as you're in his church. Okay. Outside of it, you can do anything you want, within reason, of course. But you're in his church. That's his church. He makes the rules, not you. Okay. Your husband, he told you, let's leave. I don't want to go through this. It's better if we just leave, go find another church somewhere. And she said no, basically. And until the policeman grabbed her arm and took her out of the church with husband following, was she compliant? I guess because, the next thing would be that she would be arrested. And of course, she probably thought, well, we don't want to go that far. Okay. So, to me, we have a strong-headed woman here who not only disobeys the priest, but disobeys her husband and decides for herself what is going to happen, what's going to be best for her family. Okay. That's not the way to do it. Okay. So, I think that needs to be said. So I am not going to consider her some kind of hero because she bucked the system. Yeah, she would be admirable in holding her view that, hey, masks aren't necessary and teach other people the same thing in the right circumstance. Okay. But church is not where you do that. The church is not where you're going to teach other people a lesson that the priest is wrong and your husband is wrong, and you're going to make decisions for at least yourself and anybody else who's listening. That's not the place to do it. Okay. So on the one hand, I see her perspective about the mask thing, but I don't see her perspective in how she handled it. And that needs to be said. You can think you're obeying God all you want, but if you're not doing the basic things that are required and you actually fall into sin in thinking that you're being holy and praying, well, everything comes to naught. Okay. So, and we got a lot of this. We've covered this on this program before. We have a lot of Catholic women today. Somehow, some way, they think they're going to call the shots, that they're in authority, or they have equal authority with men, and everything's different than it was before. Okay. Well, no, it's not. Okay. No, it's not. I mean, I don't know how clear Scripture has to be that women are to be in submission to their husbands first and also to the church. I mean, there's about 6 passages in the New Testament alone that teach that, and rather explicitly. Okay? This is what the Catholic Church has taught for 2,000 years. So why are we, why is this mentality here where women think that somehow everything's changed and they're going to be the ones in authority, at least equal authority? And then it's a matter of, who's going to win the arguing game. Okay. No, that's not the way it should be. The priest is in control, first of all, and then the husband. So the wife is what they call low man on the totem pole. Okay. Especially in situations like this. Now, look, these people on the other side, let's just take this priest. I think it was in Texas that this occurred. He may be one of those people, especially if he's a liberal priest, who think that the COVID virus is the worst thing ever to hit the human race. And that if you don't wear a mask, you are a murderer or a potential murderer, because you may have the virus, not admit it, and then cough your germs all over the place and get other people infected who may die. That's the way this priest is thinking. Good, bad, right, wrong, that's the way he's thinking. And you know that because he has such strict rules about COVID in his church. Okay. Now, you may invite him over to dinner one day and have a sit down with him and talk about the COVID and give your point of view that, Father, it's not as serious as you think. Okay. And you may change his mind. You may not change his mind. Or you just may get him thinking. But for now, in the Sunday worship, you're not going to change his mind. Okay. All you're going to do by not wearing a mask is get him more incensed that you're a potential murderer. Okay. And it doesn't make any difference whether he's right or wrong. That's what he figured out for his church. And until he finds out differently, that's the way he's going to run it. And there's no harm there. There's no harm in wearing a mask. He's not asking you to climb a mountain or go down to deep seas. He's just asking you to put on a mask. That's it. Now, because you have interpreted this as a sign of someone taking over your life, well, okay, that's why you don't want to put the mask on, because you have symbolized it as something other than a disease-fighting material. The priest himself, look, he has no control over your life. So as far as he sees it, this is a potential disaster for somebody to come into the church without a mask. And that's not going to happen in his church. I guarantee you that. He is not going to be responsible for you coming in, spreading germs, and possibly infecting someone. because you're going to walk out of that church after it's over and you may never see that church again, but your germs are still there infecting people as far as he's thinking, you see. And again, he may be totally wrong, but that's what he's thinking. And that's how he's going to run his church. And if he thinks that way, then he's going to make rules. And if you don't obey those rules, then you will be considered a trespasser and you will be asked to leave. And that makes perfect sense to me. Okay? So what does this tell us as Christians? How are we going to get along in this world? They're always looking for ways to trip us up. We know that. Okay? You know, as Paul taught, as Jesus taught, be at peace with all men as far as it is available. Be at peace with all men, if it's possible. Okay? In other words, look, we're not looking for ways to agitate them. We're not looking for ways to get under their skin. Because if we do, and they see that, they're going to come after us all the more. Okay? It's best to keep a low profile, go along with their little games, okay? Because it doesn't do any harm to wear a mask, does it? Okay, yeah, okay. Somebody may say, well, you know, you're breathing in your own carbon dioxide. That could be, well, yeah, to a certain degree. I understand that. Okay, but if there's no harm, there's no foul in this kind of game, okay, where the risk of you upsetting those in control by this frivolous defiance that gets you nowhere and that really amounts to nothing, you're taking a big risk. You're taking a big risk, okay, because they're in authority. You're not. You want them to be peaceable with you. You want them to sympathize with you. You want them to be gracious to you. Okay? And to a large extent, they are. Okay? But one thing you can do to upset that is start getting under their skin. Okay? Now, if it were something of a moral nature that, you know, we know that if they're, like, say, abortion, okay, we know that's a moral evil. And you can have government leaders teach us all the time that abortion's okay because the baby's just a fetus at that point and it's not a human being, blah, blah, blah. We know that's all wrong. Okay? And we do our best to fight it. We go on marches, we write letters to our congressmen, we do, but it's always peaceable. Okay? Anytime you find an abortionist carrying a gun, is going to go shoot somebody who's performing abortions, well, there's where we cross the line. Okay? We can just do so much. And we try to make it as uncomfortable for them as possible, but we do it in the right way at the right time. And they even let us go on marches. Okay? So they give us the right place and the right time. But the church is not the place where you now decide that the mask is wrong to wear, I'm not going to wear it, and, you know, I dare you to do anything about it. That's not the place to do it. Okay? So, you know, I mean, I remember the time where, you know, they come to Jesus, the Pharisees, and they say, you know, should we pay taxes to Caesar? And of course, Jesus, being the intellectual that he is, says, okay, now he knows what's happening. They're trying to trap him. And he says, go get me a coin. They get him a coin, and he says, all right, now look at this. Whose inscription is on this coin? And they say Caesar's. And then what does he say? Give to Caesar's what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. Very simple. And what happened? They all walked away. They all walked away. Because it was the perfect answer. Okay? So if somebody comes up to me with a mask, you know, I'm going to say something very similar. Let's say, who's the manufacturer of this mask? It might say made in USA, it might say made in China, who knows? But, let's say it says made in USA. So I say, okay, give to the USA what is the USA's, and give to God what is God's. Okay? If the USA wants you to play this little game where you wear a mask when you're out in public, wear it. Okay? That's what they're demanding. Okay? As long as this lasts, it may last another 6 months, another year. Okay? No harm, no foul. But then you give to God what is God's. Okay? So that's what could have happened in this church at this time. The woman could have said, this is silly. Let me wear the mask. I'll turn the baby around so he doesn't bother me. I'll go up to communion. I'll receive my communion. First, I'll take my mask off to receive the communion. Then I'll put it right back on, right in front of the priest, showing that I do not want to defy him. And I'll come back to my pew, and my husband will be happy because nothing happened. And he doesn't have to go into this, honey, you're doing the wrong thing. Let's stop this and go outside, where now she has to disobey her husband. All that could have been avoided. Okay? If she just went down the simple path and gave to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's. Simple answer. Okay? You as a Christian, you got to choose your battles. Choose your battles. We have a hard enough time living the Christian life in this cruel world of unbelievers. Okay? We don't want to make any more battles for ourselves. Okay? We have enough to do right now with our problems. Okay? And look, they're just looking. They're looking. And as long as we're humble, gentle, and meek, God will bless that. Okay? But, we have to be very careful about the battles we choose to fight. This is not one of them. Okay? This is not one of them. That should take all our time and energy. Okay? All right. So I am sorry I went 50 minutes on that, but all right. Someone says here, I'm sorry, but so during the Nazi regime, they were supposed to go along to get along. This gentleman, unfortunately, has no idea as to what is going on in our country. Well, you must have missed, Deborah, the first part of the program, because I told you what was going on. I know everything that you know about the agenda of the elite to take over and the one world government and all that stuff, okay? And your comparison with the Nazi regime is totally ridiculous, okay? We're not getting along to go along when it comes to very important things, as I just said. We're going to pick our battles. And picking whether to wear a mask or not, that's not a battle we need to be fighting. Okay? There's many other things that we need to fight against this regime, as you call it. Okay? So don't twist my words. All right. Jews in Germany. Yeah. All right. No mask. I'm sick of bowing down to the religion of COVID. Yeah, well, you want to go fight that battle? Go ahead. I'm advising that you don't. Michael Pence is attracted to men. I heard that rumor, but I don't know if there's any truth to it whatsoever. I find it strange that even came up as a rumor. But listen, unless you've got some evidence, please don't go spreading that around. All right. Zachary says, hello, Dr. Sungenis. How could there be war in heaven? Well, it's a spiritual war. There's a war going on right now with the principalities in the air, Paul says in Ephesians 6:12. However they fight their battles, I don't know. I don't have a clue how the spirit world fights its battles. All I do know is that before the devil was cast down to earth, he was allowed to go into heaven. as we also read about him in Job chapter 1. He's roaming around up there. So, you know what? We lost a lot when Adam and Eve sinned. And one was that the devil could even go up to heaven. Okay? So that is pretty evident in Scripture. Now, when Christ came, as Apocalypse 12 tells us, the devil was defeated. And as a sign of that defeat, he was cast out of heaven and cast onto the earth. And at that time, which is now, he's going after the church. Okay? So, they reside in the air and they come down spirits and they possess people and all kinds of things like that on the earth. That's happening right now. So that's the difference there. All right, Mary Kunkel says, I stopped going to church because I will not wear a mask in church. You know what? You know what's ludicrous is the fact that you decided that. I have to be very frank with you. Now look what you've done. Now you can't worship. You've cut off your nose to spite your face. You can't worship. You can't receive the Eucharist. You're not going to receive any of the other sacraments because you're going to stamp your feet and say, I'm not going to wear a mask. Now, if you wore a mask, what harm would it do? What harm would it do? Nothing. Okay? That's the thing that bothers me. And here we have another woman who's going to decide for the rest of us how we're going to operate. That's wrong. Okay? And I'll be here, the first one to tell you that here on this program. Holy Trinity on Oaklawn and Dallas could have simply let it go and not call the cops, or she could have simply worn a mask. But Bishop Burns has told, too many people writing in. I'm missing all my cursor won't go back up for some reason. Yeah, the bishop could have done a lot more, I would say, a lot easy. He could have been a lot more lenient, okay? But he's not that kind of individual, and he has the right not to be lenient. He set the rules. He told the person, you need to wear a mask if you want to be in this church. So he let it be known. He didn't say, oh, you're not wearing a mask, out with you. He said, you need to wear a mask. Okay? He has that right as the authority in his church to say that. Okay? You have no right to disobey. If you want to disobey, then don't go into that church. It's very simple. Okay? It's a privilege for us to go into a place of worship in the Catholic Church. It's a privilege. It's not a right. Okay? That institution has been made with the authority of the Vatican, supported by the Vatican, put in charge by a representative of the Vatican. Okay? That's their church. We're just visitors. Okay? And they make the rules. So that's the way it works. Yep, masks don't work. It's a fact. I believe that, Mary. Okay? That's the problem. We see both sides of the issue. But you're going to cut yourself off from going to church because a mask doesn't work? No. That makes no sense at all. All right. I found a traditional Latin mass to go to that does not require mass, unlike my ordinary parish. Well, that's great. That's where you want to go. Okay, you're making it very simple for yourself and for everybody. Oh, I'm sorry, Rand Paul. Yeah, I said Paul Rand. Sorry, Paul Rand. Yeah, I mean, listen to Rand Paul and his father. They can educate you a lot to what's going on. What parallels do you see to 1920, 30 Germany? Parallels all over the place, okay? In the bigger story of the elite trying to control us, yeah. It's never died, whether it's Germany or Russia or China, whoever it is. We're going to see this all the time, masks or no masks. My only issue here is whether, you should leave church because the priest asked you to wear a mask, okay? That's the only issue we're talking about here. All right. What is your take on female rulers? Some say it is unbiblical. Isaiah 3:12. Are countries civilly any better having male leaders over female? Look, this is what the Bible and the church have taught us, that women are not to be in authority. As I said earlier, there are 6 places in the New Testament that are very explicit about women not being authority over men. That includes their husbands and the church. Okay? Isaiah 3:12, the passage you're talking about, you know what that says? When Israel was in its highest apostasy, Isaiah comes back and said, children are their oppressors and women rule over them. Okay? That's what that passage says. So you picked the best passage you could to get us back in line with how things should be structured. All right. Question. How are kinds of the Bible classified? Of course, dog, cat, lion. What explains those like buffalo or kangaroo in origins pre or post? Well, a kangaroo would be one kind. A buffalo would be another kind. Okay, that's the way the Bible treats them in Genesis chapter 1. And that would be verses 15 to 20. Okay, as a matter of fact, it uses the word kinds 10 times in that chapter. So it's very important to pay attention to what it's talking about. Then you have passages like Leviticus, what is it? Leviticus 5 or 16 and Deuteronomy that have another type of kinds, and that's a sub-variety of the kinds that are listed in Genesis chapter 1. So the Bible basically has two kinds of kinds, if you want to look at it that way. One with a major like kangaroo, okay? And then within the kangaroo family, you have different variations of kangaroos, okay? Blah, blah, blah. And that would be true with any kind of species. You have one species, birds, and then beneath that, you have all kinds of different birds. There's 5,000 different kinds of birds on the earth, okay? There's like 250 different kinds of cats, 175 different kinds of dogs, so that would be the second tier, the second kind. All right. Okay, so it says it was the priest not celebrating the mass that called the cops. Well, that's his prerogative. He works there too. And he knew, and you should know what the rules were. Okay, they made that explicit. Okay, if you're going to defy the church, you're going to suffer the consequences, whatever it is. Let's just take the mask issue away. Let's say you were doing something else. The priest said this was wrong, it's not acceptable in this church, but you did it anyway. He can call the cops on you and have you taken out for disobedience. Okay, mask or no mask doesn't make any difference. Just fill in the blank with something else that the church said you shouldn't be doing at church. Okay, let's say somebody wanted to sing during the Eucharist, all by himself, wanted to sing. Whole rest of the church is quiet, and he just breaks into song. Okay, well, there may be some priests out there that might like that. Who knows? But I know that a lot of priests will not take that kind of spontaneous movement of the congregation, and will either tell you to be quiet, and if you don't listen, he'll have you removed. Okay, so take it from that angle if you want. Okay. She is also pregnant and has a baby already. Yeah, that's the 1-year-old, and she's pregnant. Well, all the more. She shouldn't be putting stress on herself. If she got a baby she's carrying, take the calm way out. Take the peaceable way out. And you'll save both yourself, your husband, the baby you're carrying, and your 1-year-old a lot of grief. Okay. That it's very hard to get oxygen if you're wearing a mask if you're pregnant. Okay, well then go in the back of the church, take the mask off, and breathe the oxygen. At least you'll be there. When you go up to communion, put your mask on so the priest sees the mask on. and receive your communion, come back, and then go to the vestibule again, take your mask off if you need to breathe, free oxygen. Okay, there are ways to accomplish this than just stamping your feet and saying, no, I'm not going to wear a mask, and then wonder why the priest is being so hard on you. Okay, all right. I believe it's because it's not a business in the sense that someone owns it. The church belongs to the people. The woman wasn't wearing the mask because she is pregnant. No, that's not the way it works, Rose. Okay? This building is owned by someone. It's run by someone. It's run by the Catholic Church, who sets rules. Okay? If you don't believe so, go up and run up and down the aisle while the Eucharist is being distributed and see what the church does to you. Okay? Break some other kind of rule and see what the church does to you. They will come down on you because you're disrupting the worship of everybody else. You're breaking the rules, and you're showing that you want to be the one that's in authority. Okay? It doesn't work that way. All right. Yeah. If you have that mentality, you're not going to survive very long. That's what I can tell you. Oh, the child should be, at least another female. The child should be able to see her mother's face. Look, we're at worship. Okay? If your child is pulling the mask off and you know the priest is getting upset about it and it doesn't go with the rules, then find something else to solve the problem. Okay? Solving the problem is not by stamping your feet and saying, I'm not going to wear the mask. And then you can be surprised when the police show up at the pew because you've disobeyed what the priest said. Okay? And if you don't like it, then go somewhere else. Go find a priest that's more amenable to how you see things. I'm sure there are some out there. This particular priest in this particular church didn't want that to happen. Okay? So as I said, he must be very scared about this COVID virus. He's convinced that it's a deadly killer and that anybody that comes in without a mask is going to kill people, potentially. Okay? That's how strongly he believes, and that's just the nature of the beast. The science hasn't been crystal clear on this thing, although we do see dead bodies here, there, and everywhere. Okay? So that gives him an inkling that something's wrong. And we may not know how severe or when it's going to be cleared up or things like that, but something's wrong, and we're going to have to put in rules. And even if they're not the best rules, we're going to have to do something until we know we have more knowledge to deal with this situation. Okay? No, she's not being discriminated against because she's pregnant. From the priest's point of view, he's being helpful to her so that, she doesn't get the virus. That's what he thinks. That if she wears a mask, the chances of her getting the virus are less than if she didn't wear the mask. That's the way the priest is thinking. And he has the right to think that way. Okay? All right. All right. Well, I think we've said enough on this. I'm going to look for any questions on on some other issues here because I think we've exhausted this. All right, one more. It says, does Dr. Sungenis see what we are saying about her being pregnant? Of course I do. Okay? But if you're that concerned about being pregnant, then don't go into a situation, number one, where you're going to bring stress on yourself and your baby that you're carrying. Two, that you might be in a situation where, let's say the COVID virus was in the church and you're exposing your baby to it. Don't want to do that, do we? Okay? You want an experience where you can freely worship? Well, then let's not get all hung up about whether you should wear a mask or not. And if you think that you're going to suffocate because you have to put it over your nose, well, then go to the back, as I said, in the vestibule and breathe the air that's there. And you can still see the mask that's going on. When it comes time for communion, you put your mask on for that, 3 minutes? You go up, get your communion, you walk back and go to the vestibule again. It's easy, okay? And she made it complicated. All right. Cindy says she couldn't breathe. No, she could breathe. Her excuse was that the baby kept pulling the mask down. So evidently the mother didn't think she couldn't breathe. That's not the excuse she gave. Okay. This is what you are imposing on the situation to try to give her an excuse not to wear a mask. That wasn't her excuse. Okay. And I covered this earlier. I said, if the baby is, the 1-year-old is pulling the mask down, well, then turn the 1-year-old around so he faces the front and, can't pull your mask down. And then if he gets a little fidgety after a while, then give him to your husband and he can hold him for a while. Okay. Or put him in a car seat. Or if all else fails, go back to the vestibule again and let him walk around. There's a lot of ways that you can deal with the situation peacefully and calmly without getting under the skin of the priest who was doing the mass or the priest who was monitoring the situation. Both of them have the right to do what they did. Yeah, here we go. All the women, I'm amazed at how many women are here complaining about this. Megan says, are you kidding me? This is our church. Everyone needs to take off these masks. This is leading to the Great Reset. No, it's not. Okay? There are many other things that are leading to the Great Reset. You need to stop taking charge, telling other people how to conduct themselves in the church. This is the church that's telling you. Okay. The problem with this whole mentality that I'm seeing coming out of people is that, oh, this is going to be our excuse to buck the church, to not listen to anything they say, and I'm going to do things my way. We even had one woman here who's she's not going to wear a mask, and she's not going to go to church because she doesn't want to wear a mask. Okay, yeah, this is where you start crossing the line where now you become the authority and not the church. Okay, that's a very dangerous area to be in. Yeah. There you go, Zachary. Who is like God? When it has to do with morality, mask, no mask is not a hill to die on. It's best to respect the rule of the priest and move on to worship our Lord. Zachary, you about summed up what I said in the first 50 minutes in one sentence. That's because that's exactly what I said. Okay? Not a hill to die on. Aaron Carroll says her husband should put pants on if he is going to church. Well, I didn't want to say it, Aaron, but yeah, I think he was a little, you can tell who wears the pants in that family. Okay. Now, I hate to be so brash, but look, this is a perennial problem among Catholic couples today. Somehow the wife thinks that she is an equal in authority with her husband, and this is causing all kinds of problems. Now, he was pleading with her, and she ignored him. I think I've heard him at least 2 or 3 times to say, let's go outside the church, and she ignored him. Not a good situation. All right. Dr. says, how far do we take it? What if the priest shuts down the church to follow the rules? Should we still comply? Well, what are the odds of the priest shutting down the worship service? Okay. That hasn't happened. As bad as the COVID has been in the minds of the bishops, they haven't closed it down. Maybe they did at first, and then they said, okay, now we can let them back in because we figured out if we keep them 6 feet apart and all this. Okay, so they even worked out their own problem. And so we've already been through this. So the question is moot. They've decided that, no, that's not the way to go. Here's what we're going to do. But if we're going to do this, then we're going to have restrictions. And here are the restrictions. And again, they're not asking you to climb a mountain. All he's asking you to do is put this mask on for an hour and stop thinking of it as a symbol that the world is going to try to take you over. Okay? You want to go talk about that kind of stuff, do so after Mass. We're here to worship. This is the best way we have found to worship. It makes everybody else that's in the pews very comfortable because those people that are in the pews think, oh my gosh, somebody's coming in here without a mask, they might spread germs and I might get COVID and I may die. And some of them are elderly. Okay. So if you put the mask on, at least it makes them feel calm that, okay, wow, we don't have to worry about that. I can worship in peace because everybody's obeying the same rule. Again, whether it works or doesn't, it doesn't make any difference. Okay. This is what the church has called for. And the question is, are you going to be obedient to it? Okay. All right. What are your thoughts on St. Ignatius Study Bible for the New Testament? I think Scott Hahn is the main theologian. I think it's a good study Bible. I think they went through the whole New Testament. I think they did a pretty good job. I know the guy who did it, Curtis Mitch, and he's pretty adept. So, yeah, I would have no complaints against it. Yeah, things are moving too fast here. So I'm going to go down to the bottom here. Now, here's an interesting person. Unborn lives matter. Okay, so you're very concerned about unborn lives. You say, I'm not wearing a mask. Sorry, but I'm not going to be obedient to it. I cannot tolerate them. Okay, so that's defiance. As far as I can, that's just total defiance. Okay, you don't want to wear a mask in your house or in your car or wherever you go privately, but you say that you're not going to wear a mask because the priest told you so. Yeah, that's defiance. All right. Jerry Mattis was recounting your trip to Ireland. I think it was 2004, actually. How was the trip? It was good. I mean, I just did research most of the time. So, you know, I got accomplished what I needed to get accomplished. That's when I went over. I forget what the guy's name was who was over there. He may have died since then, because that's 16 years ago, and he was in his 70s then. So I don't know. I haven't heard from him. All right. Now, vaccine is different. Okay. As a matter of fact, you just proved my point asking that question, Servant Mary, because the vaccine may be may be harmful to you. Okay. And there's many, many people that say the same thing. Okay. As a matter of fact, Canada and another country just stopped the AstraZeneca vaccine and the Pfizer vaccine because it's causing blood clots. Okay. So, hey, if you know that, then you don't take the vaccine if you want to stay healthy, right? Okay. Unless you want to take the risk. That's your decision. But the priest isn't going to tell you to take the vaccine. Now, he may have in his church, yeah, the vaccinated people over here, the unvaccinated over here. But he's not saying that the unvaccinated people can't come to his church. He's just telling you the precautions he's going to take, and they need to be obeyed. Whether you disagree or agree, it doesn't make any difference. You don't run his church, okay? All right, let's see what else we got. Dr. Sungenis says, if you really want to drive the comments wild, wear a mask tomorrow night live. Yeah. I'll never do it. You know that ahead of time. Dr. Roberts Sungenis, are masks good to wear? Good for me to wear? Depends. If you're in a situation like Deidre was last night, or whenever she went to the mass, yes, it's good to wear, because the priest said in order to stay in this church you need to wear a mask. Okay, I'll wear the mask, no big deal. Okay, now would I wear masks elsewhere? No, because I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it does anything for you, because if it's a virus, it's going to go right through the mask. And I don't like breathing my own carbon dioxide. So I don't want to wear a mask. But if I'm inside a church and I'm under the authority of the church, okay, things are different now. And like Zachary told us, it's not a hill I want to die on. Okay? All right. All right, I'm looking for questions. Guys, I forgot to tell you at the beginning, if you have a question, and I hope you do, put question. You know, I forgot to say it at the beginning of the program. Question, question in capital letters. That way I know that you have a question. So that's what I'm going to be looking for right now. All right, question. Your remark about how most visions are seen by women and your comment about divine mercy got me to thinking about so many different devotions, ways to pray, etc. I'm new. Okay. I'm not sure exactly what the question is here. So, Thomas says, Robert, just think these women you are talking about, God made just a little lower than the angels. I don't know what you mean by that, Thomas. I do know that you're misquoting Hebrews chapter 1, because that's talking about Christ being made a little lower than the angels. So it doesn't apply to women. And even if it did, I don't know what you're referring to. So you're going to have to be a lot clearer on your comment. Pat Allenhurst. Now, I don't know whether that Pat is a male or female, but she says, I concur with Dr. Sungenis. She was looking for a fight. It's best that she doesn't return and cause more scandal. People want to go to church to worship in peace. I would have to agree with you there, Pat. Okay. A servant of Mary. Masks are symbols of an enslaved people. Take them off. Yeah. You can take them off wherever you want, but when you're going to go to the church that you're not in authority of, you better wear one. Okay. Otherwise, you're going to be asked to leave. And it may not be such a nice asking. John Fields, his question, do you think Jerusalem and the cross where Jesus died is the center of the universe? Do some saints say that? There's been some speculation about that, John, that when we had, in the beginning, we had, there's some people that think actually that Jerusalem was the Garden of Eden, was set in the Garden of Eden. And, many years later, it became Jerusalem. There are others who hold that since the continental masses were all one with just little waterways between certain crevices, it's called Pangea, that the center of that Pangea was Jerusalem. Okay. Now, I think they're stretching things a bit. And the question is, does it really matter? Okay. It's one thing to have the earth as the center, but how would we determine with all the plate movements, the flood causing that, and the present plate movements, how would we determine what was the center? And how do you determine the center of the surface? So that's the other thing, because the earth is a globe. So you have land masses on the surface. How do you find the center of that? Yeah. So I would defer to say, yeah, there's people that have thought that, but nobody's come up with any proof. Okay. All right. Gabby says, another woman, sir, COVID is not dogma. Okay. Great, Gabby. We both agree. COVID's not dogma. The question is, what is dogma? The dogma is that the church is in the authority. Okay. Not you and not Deidre. Okay. That's the dogma. Question is, are you going to obey it? Servant of Mary says, I'm looking for a question. I don't see questions, so I'm just going to answer these comments. If it's not our right to worship in a Catholic church, then we can have them taken from us at any time. Yeah, your whole salvation is not a right, servant of Mary. It's a privilege. And the church that Jesus gave you is a privilege. It's not a right. You did nothing to deserve anything. Okay? Ina Handbasket. Can you please talk about the plethora of devotions and how to figure out what is legit and worthwhile? I'm not in a position to do that for you. I'm sorry. If you bring one to me, I can look at it. I can tell you what the church says about it. I can give you my own opinion about it. But, offhand, I have no list of what's legit and what's not and what's going to help and what's not. So sorry, I can't help you there. Pat says, do you know if she is planning on returning to the same church? I don't think so. I mean, from what I heard, that will be the last time she sets foot in that church, which is probably good for her and the priest. Because of course, unless she's seen the light and says that, hey, this is not my church, this is his church, and the rules say to wear a mask, she's not ready to do that, then, I don't think she would be ready to step foot in the church again. Yeah, okay, so this one says, if not this hill, in other words, we don't want to die on this hill. I think we agree to that. What about the hill when bishops mandate the vaccine to get access to the mass? They won't. Okay? They won't do that. All right, I'm looking for, okay, here's a question. Roxanne, what is your opinion on crying rooms? I often see children acting up that I wish were in a separate room or their parents would discipline them. Or how about a brat room? Yeah, this is one of my pet peeves too. when they are, 1-year-old, 2-year-olds, 3-year-olds, even up to 4, they haven't the slightest idea what's going on at the Mass. Okay. It's very hard for them to sit still for an hour or an hour and a half. Invariably, at least one of the members of the family is going to be opening the mouth and making all kinds of sounds. And sometimes right when the confection of the Eucharist is occurring, when everyone's trying to pay attention, and sometimes it just goes on. And this happens every week at the Mass I go to. And some of the parents take their kids out, some of them don't. The ones that don't, it's like, why? Why would you not? When you know that your child is disturbing the worship, why would you not take your child out? Because we do have a separate room for these children to go to. And invariably every week, some child will be crying or screaming, and it doesn't really take much to disturb your train of thought when you're trying to concentrate on the Mass. That's why we're normally quiet at Mass, because we're all concentrating on the same thing. So, and husband and wife can take turns. I've seen some husbands that are totally oblivious to what's going on with their children. And, they're worshiping and having a great time worshiping, so they think, and their kids are acting up. They don't discipline them. They don't tell their wife to take the kid out, or the kids, because sometimes it's more than one. And so the whole church has to suffer. Okay. Otherwise, these people are great people. Okay. But when it comes to the kids, somehow the rules don't seem to apply to them that they would want to apply to somebody else. So, yeah, I think that's something that each church should have. As a matter of fact, they should have someone assigned to take care of these children. At that tender age of 2, 3, and 4. Now, if your kid is 2, 3, and 4, and they don't tend to make noises, whatever the noise may be, then of course you can keep them in the Mass with you. Now, we've never had a problem with that in my family. Okay. We've just never had a problem with it. We've never had to take our kids out because, I am very sensitive to that. If my kid starts acting up in church, I know it's bothering all kinds of people around me, and I just will not have it. So I come down with a heavy hand when my kid starts acting up. Okay, and I let him know that mommy and daddy are displeased immensely at his behavior, and somehow he gets the message. So we've never had a problem with that. I wish more husbands, I'm not patting myself on the back here, I'm just saying what I did works. And so I would encourage other fathers to do the same thing. Okay. When your kid starts out, you need to pay attention to that kid. Okay. It's one thing to be devout and pray. Yeah, I know that's what we're all there for. Okay. But it's quite another when you ignore your kid who's misbehaving and think somebody else is somehow going to take care of it. And that because you're praying, you don't have to extend yourself to take care of your children. No, that's not the way it works. Okay. If you really want to worship God, take care of your children first, then come back and worship God. He'll be a lot happier with you. Guaranteed. All right. All right. Here's a good question from Thomas. Does God appoint leaders of nations? What purpose did God have for appointing Joe Biden as president? Okay. As the Bible says, God knows the number of hairs on your head, right? He knows when the little sparrow falls from the sky. God knows it and allows it. Okay. So God knew all about Joe Biden before Joe Biden got in. Okay. But there's a principle with God. he will give you the leader that the country wants. He'll allow it to happen. So most of the country, or a lot of the people who wanted Joe Biden in and wanted to cheat their way in, somehow they got Joe Biden in to beat Trump in the popular vote. We had a little tussle about that, but it came out that Joe Biden won fair and square, at least in the minds of the people that won, and God allowed that to happen. Okay? God does that all the time. He takes the temperature of the nation, and if they want this kind of leader to be there, God will allow that leader to be there. Okay? That's God's prerogative. Sometimes God will intervene and put a leader in position that is of his choosing, so to speak. Okay? When and if and when that happens, that's all in God's mind. I have no idea when that happens. Okay? We've had a lot of bad popes. You could say the same thing about them. Why would God allow them to come in? And sometimes stay for, 5, 10 years as a pope before things are fixed up. Okay? God has his reasons. He takes the temperature of all the people and he sees what kind of leader they deserve. Okay? So the problem is not always with the leader. The problem is with the society itself. Now take a look at our society. Compare this society to a society, say, 100 years ago or 200 years ago. Yeah. We at least know that half the people, if not more, are all for homosexual marriage and giving homosexuals freedom. Yeah. Was that the case 100 years ago? No. Okay. Or abortion. At least half, if not 60% of the country is all for abortion, right up until the time of birth. Okay. Look at the divorces and remarriages we have. 60% first marriages now end up in a divorce. 60% of second marriages end up in a divorce. Okay. And then look at all the kids that are strewn all over the country with single parent families. Yeah. The drugs that we take, the alcohol that we consume, it's out of proportion, totally. So this is the kind of society we have. Okay, whether you like it or not. And what kind of leader are they going to elect? A guy like Joe Biden. Yeah. A guy like Trump, maybe get in, squeak by like he did in 2016. He just squeaked by, just barely cross the finish line ahead of Hillary. Okay? So, yeah, it can work. If we get enough people rally around him, that can work, but it all happens quite naturally. Okay? And God's going to allow that leader to go in that is most moved by the country that wants him. And that's what we see. Okay? So God doesn't appoint them. Most of the time, God, his hands are free of that. Okay? And he lets the countries do what they want to do. All right? Now, he knows what everybody's doing, and he calculates it all out and makes his decisions accordingly. And he'll have a judgment here or a judgment there. Okay? But God very rarely intervenes and says, okay, now this is the ruler that's going to be here. Okay? All right. What are your thoughts on layman Eucharistic ministers? Is this a right and valid form of giving and receiving the Eucharist? Well, the church has said so, Zachary, so the question's moot. You see, you are a member of a church that makes the rules, and you have to abide by them. Okay, I say it as simple as that. It's not a matter of the church makes the rules, and then you as a pew member gets to decide whether this is right or wrong. Okay, it is what it is. You see, when you sign on to be a Catholic, this is what you're signing on to. The church makes its decision, you accept it. Now, you may have an opinion against it. You may have strong or weak opinion against it. Okay, that's natural. Okay. You may feel so strongly about it that you'll complain to your priest or your bishop or even the Pope. Okay, you can do that. Canon law allows you to do that. All right. And sometimes you may make a major move. I had that experience once in my life. Okay, where I wrote to the Vatican, I wrote to the USCCB, and I had a doctrine taken out of the United States Adult Catechism that was a heresy, all because of the effort that I started. Okay, so I've seen it happen, and you can do the same thing. In this particular thing, I don't think you're going to get very far, okay, because there's nothing really immoral about it. You know, some of us have this sort of sacred sense that only the priest can give communion. Well, the church has seen past that. Okay. That used to be the way that they thought. Now that's not the way they think. So the church made the decision, so we accept it. Whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, we accept it as Catholics. Okay. Again, this is not a hill you want to die on. All right. All right. All right, I'm trying to find a question here. Okay, so Dr. Robert is wrong. BN says, whoever BN is, Dr. Robert is wrong. It's false doctrine. It's not good. It's disgusting to take communion in the hand from a lay minister. Really? So you're going to make your own church and make your own rules, right, BN? Is that the way it works? No, that's not the way it works, especially for something like this. The church makes it. If you want to go make your own church and say, we're going to have it this way, well, then you become a Protestant. Okay. That's what they do. They see something they don't like in the church. They either try to make their own church so that they don't have to do it, or they leave the church and don't go to church anymore, whatever. But that's what Protestants do. Okay. That's not what we are. All right. Looking for some questions again. What are your thoughts on having a non-habit wearing liberal nun for the next pope? I don't like it any more than you do, David. Okay. I think nuns should be distinguished in their dress and they should have a habit. I don't like liberal nuns. Okay. So if I had my druthers, yeah, that's what I would wish for. Okay. A habit wearing nun that's not liberal. All right. BN he says, I have a more important question. Is rock music like the 60s to 70s music bad to listen to? And please be easy on this because the music makes me happy. And yes, I do give glory to God first. BN, as a Christian, you have the freedom to do just about anything you want. Okay? Even Paul, and I got this from Paul back in Galatians, he circumcised Timothy, okay, but he didn't circumcise Titus. And the reason was that Paul said, look, I'm a Christian. I have the freedom to do anything I want as long as it's not sinful. So if I circumcise or don't circumcise, I can do that. Why? Because it has nothing to do with sin. Now, he circumcised Timothy because he was going to teach some Jews, and he figured, well, it might be better for Timothy to be circumcised, not because we have to, but because these Jews would feel more comfortable with him, and he'd be able to teach them without getting anything in the way. So here's something just like the mask. Paul says, look, circumcision does nothing, okay? But I'm going to allow Timothy to be circumcised because it's conducive to him teaching these Jews over here, because they'll feel comfortable with him. Just like the mask. You go into the church, you put the mask on. The mask is nothing. It means nothing, okay? But you put the mask on. Why? Because it makes that priest feel a lot better about you. It makes all the congregation feel a lot better about you, because you're like them, you see. And this is the strategy, the psychology that Paul uses in order to try to get along with people, because he's got bigger battles to fight. And what is that bigger battle? That bigger battle is trying to get the gospel to these Jews so they can be converted. And if he figures that he can't get it to them in the same strength as he would if Timothy was circumcised, let's get Timothy circumcised. Because to us, circumcision is nothing. Okay? Just a tool. That's all it is. It's a tool to go speak to these Jews. Now, with Titus, it was different. Why? Well, because these Judaizers who came into Galatia that had Peter sitting down with them, and then when the Gentiles came, Peter left. Okay, Paul knew they had an agenda. And that agenda was to make Christians get circumcised. And they were giving this excuse. They were saying, oh yeah, you've got a great Christianity. It does all these things, but you're missing one thing. You need to be circumcised, and then it'll be complete. Your Christianity will be complete. Okay? And of course, Paul knew what was going to happen. You know, if you allow the Christians to be circumcised, then the Jews would come back and say, yeah, and there's, attached to circumcision, there are these ritual laws that you need to obey here. The Sabbath and eating certain foods and blah, blah, blah. And before you know it, the Christian would become a Jew, a full-fledged Jew, obeying all the ceremonial laws. And Paul said, no. I will have none of that. Okay? In other words, when Paul saw that the Jews were trying to force the Christians to be circumcised, that's when Paul said, Titus will be circumcised over my dead body. Okay? There's no way I'm going to give the impression to these Christians that in order to be a perfect Christian, a full-fledged Christian, you now have to be circumcised. Okay? No way. All right? So there's the difference. In other words, Paul is saying, I've got freedom. I've got so much freedom as a Christian, I can decide to circumcise somebody without any repercussions whatsoever, which he did to Timothy. Okay? And by the same token, I can refuse circumcision when I know the motive of the one pushing it is to make us Jews and not Christians, you see. So look, you got freedom to listen to music because you got freedom as a Christian. You have to be the one to decide, is this music good for me? Okay. Now, like if you're talking about heavy metal music, I think the tendency would be to say, not very good for me, right? Okay. Now, if you have soft rock or you've got something that's jazzy and, makes you feel good or whatever, okay. So you've got a lot of wiggle room there. Okay. That's why some people listen to classical music, because they don't have to worry about all this extracurricular activity that's going on in the songs, especially with the words. Okay. It's a lot safer area. But every Christian can judge for himself what things he's going to engage in, whether it's music, food, art, sculpture, culture, politics, all these kinds of things. You have complete freedom to decide what you want to do. Okay? Now, I didn't intend to make you feel good, BN, but I think I did. Okay? And that's because now you know what the spirit of being a Christian is all about. Okay? Now, take this issue we were talking about before. I said, let's put on the mask of this nothing. Just like circumcision is nothing. So, and now you have to ask yourself, well, what's the real important thing here? The important thing is for me to try to get along with this congregation, because we're all here for the same purpose, and that's the worship. So if I just put this mask on to make everybody feel comfortable, and I know the mask is nothing, wow. I have a priority of truths that I have led my life by. The priority is that I show love and concern to this congregation and to the priest, and I show respect to the priest by obeying him. And everything's happy now. Okay, everything is on an even keel. It's peaceful. So, wow. And the cost was what? Putting on a mask? Just like Paul, circumcising Timothy was the cost for trying to win the Jews for Christ? Yeah. All right. Okay, folks. It's right around 10 o'clock, so I don't see any more questions here. I just see a lot of comments. So I am going to pass on those. And so tomorrow, what we're going to do is we're going to cover the issue about the CDF going against homosexual unions. And there's been some blowback from people you would expect it to come from. Nevertheless, it's there, and we're going to deal with it. That will be our program topic for tomorrow. That I don't think will take too long. That might take 20 minutes. Of course, you know me. Sometimes I go further than I should. But at any rate, that will be our thing tomorrow. Now, if you can, please stop at robertsongenis.org and make a donation if you can. And we have some materials there, books and CDs, DVDs, all kinds of things that I think you might like. So we'll see you tomorrow. God bless you all. Thank you for being with us for a rip-roaring program. I hope you all learned. I certainly did.